With as many manga and anime that exist today, repeat occurrences such as tropes are bound to exist in almost every series. Things ranging from the brother complex, sister complex, beach episodes, you name it, those will be prevalent in almost any anime series you look. And the existence of tropes isn't necessarily a bad thing. It's all about how effectively you use it that makes it bad. However, not all tropes are created equally, and today I wanted to look at what my favorite and least favorite tropes in anime are. I'll be using the tier list made on tiermaker.com, but fair warning, a lot of the tropes, quote unquote, they listed here aren't actual tropes. They're more of genres or things that exist and not necessarily reoccurring tropes. So I'll be picking and choosing the tropes that I want to rank, so there's going to be some stuff left out, obviously. This video is going to turn out really scuffed, but I'm going to try to do this in one take and maybe make it seem as natural as possible. But without further ado, we can start off with the accidental pervert. I hear it more referred to as lucky lecher, but accidental pervert is the instance where the MC or any character finds themselves in perverted situations with a usually female character. They walk in on them taking a bath, or they accidentally slip their hand into their bra. This trope, I don't particularly care for. It doesn't bother me when it exists because I know a lot of people, particularly with Fire Force, found it to be one of the worst aspects, with Shinra usually getting into lucky lecture moments with Tamaki. But for me myself, sometimes it could be funny, sometimes it could be drawn out, but it typically doesn't bother me. So I'm gonna put it right in the middle at B tier. Up next we have the Ahog, or the Ahoge, which is, you can consider it a trope because it does exist in almost every anime and solely anime. For those that don't know, an ahog is just basically the hair loop that exists in somebody's head and usually indicates a character's emotions or their current mental state. Usually I would point to Adaragi in this instance, and I really like how it's utilized there. It shows when he's happy, excited, sad, and it's used as another storytelling device. So I'm going to put it in A tier. It's an interesting way that expresses emotion and storytelling beats that can only exist within the anime and manga medium. Up next we have anime hair. And anime hair, to me, I like. It's a way to differentiate characters, and there's a lot of cool designs that exist with it. You can have pink, purple, blue, green, any type of hair, and usually you use this to distinguish who the important characters are. I understand that sometimes it could be annoying that you have these random colorful haired characters in a school and everybody else just has brown or black hair. But to me, I usually like that. Hair is one of the most important designs on any anime character, so I'm gonna put it actually in S tier. That might be a shocker to some people, but I really like the anime hair trope. The beach episode. Beach episodes, they can either disrupt the flow of something, My Hero Season 5, or they could add just some much needed fun. They exist, they usually don't bother me, but and they're good for their fan service, obviously. We get to see those anime girl bazoombas, but to me, they just exist. I'm just gonna put it in C tier. They're not offensive, but I would not lose sleep if they don't exist in a show. Up next, the Big Brother complex, otherwise known as the Oni-chans out there. This one, again, it doesn't, it exists. It's something that's there. A lot of characters that have these complexes are typically okay characters. It exists in shows like Bunny Girl Senpai and, of course, Eromanga Sensei. And I'm not particularly a fan of it, but I also am not a fan of it. I'll go ahead and throw that also in C tier. Up next, we have cat girls. Cat girls are super fucking hot. Double S tier. Up next, we have bunny girls. Bunny girls are super fucking hot. Double S tier. Up next, we have cute girls doing cute things. I made a whole video about slice of life and cute girls doing cute things. It's one of my favorite genres, and I guess it is a trope as it does exist within other series. It's not necessarily a genre in and of itself, but I love it enough and I want to give it enough praise. I'm throwing it up in double S tier. I know that's already 3 double S tiers, might not be super interesting here, but we have up next the childhood love interest. To me, this is another one that kind of just exists. A lot of the time it's used in harem anime or romance animes, and when they exist, you typically know this character is going to lose. But to me, again, I don't care much for it. Usually when the person's a childhood love interest, they're like my least favorite character in the show. Throwing that also in C tier. The Chuniboyo, aka the Chuniboyo, is somebody that plays up their power, the grandiose power. They're a Chuni for short. Somebody like Megumin, where they talk about how they're the High Lord and they have this explosive power, but in reality they're just some loser in a witch costume. But it's usually cute. I don't mind it. I'm gonna throw it in B tier. Skipping all the way over to Dandere, and you're gonna have to give me one moment because I forgot what a Dandere is. Okay, sorry, I just looked it up. Okay, a Dandere is usually the quiet and withdrawn characters, and I actually do like Danderes. There's somebody like Shimarine from Yudu Camp, and while they're usually a lot of the time boring characters, I don't mind them. Again, this is probably going to be another C tier. They can be nice. There's characters I particularly love, like Shimarine, but for the most part, they're the less interesting characters and are usually used for like the drama in a series. Up next, we have the Do Nothing Club, and Do Nothing Clubs are great. They exist mostly in Cute Girls Doing Cute Things or other slice of life shows where the whole entire point of the club is they do nothing, or it's an art club or a music club with like 3 members and they do nothing besides like joke around. I like that. It's always fun to watch. I'm throwing that in A tier. Ecchi fan service shows. I just made a whole video about an ecchi series. I really like ecchi. I'm gonna throw this in S tier. I have been reading solely ecchi for the last few months, and ecchi is actually really good. Outside of just the typical fan service, they do provide good stories and good art, and of course, hot anime girls. Up next is the elaborate school uniform, and of course this exists in anime. This is to help differentiate different anime series from one another, so you can't have all of them just running around in the same anime uniform. And I like this. A lot of the times the school uniforms look pretty cool and nice, so I'm gonna throw this in A tier. I do like the school uniforms most of the time. Filler episodes, the absolute worst. Filler provides nothing of importance to any series, and sometimes I know people will probably point out to filler episodes they do like, and that's fine. I do find some filler episodes I like myself, but I would much prefer something that is important to the story, or at least provides some context to a character or something that exists. Now, of course, this shouldn't apply to like slice of life series or stuff where there isn't necessarily a linear plot to follow, but if there's a linear plot, something bigger at hand, and you throw a filler episode in between, that ruins the whole flow of everything. Look at My Hero Academia Season 5. I'm going to keep referring to that. They threw 2 filler episodes into the season, and it's kind of ruined the flow of everything. So for me, that's another F tier. The first girl always wins the MC's love. Again, this one exists. It doesn't bother me, but I could do without it. D tier. Next up, we have the gal girl, or the gyaru, aka a girl. A gyaru in Japan is when they tan their skin, wear super long nails, dye their hair blonde. Super into like makeup culture and stuff like that. I'm usually not one that likes gyarus, but I did recently read Gal Gohan, and it raised my opinion a bit. Still not the biggest fan. I'll throw gal girls in C tier. Generic male protagonist. This one is, if the generic is a part of their appeal, or like they're supposed to look bland, like Saitama, then it's cool. But for the most part, I would prefer a male protagonist with substance. I wouldn't point in the direction of somebody like Please Don't Toy With Me Nagatoro's Paisen or Uzaki-chan's Sakurai, as they're bland, but they come into their own later on, and I enjoy that. That's a sign of a good generic protagonist. But for me, for the most part, I usually don't like when they're generic. F tier. Harem. As I've mentioned before, I'm a harem fan. I've watched quite a few harems in my days, and even though I get pretty tired of the tropes, I still watch a lot of them because they always turn out to be really fun. So for me, I'm gonna throw it in B tier. The Hot Springs episode. The Hot Springs episodes are, on the contrary to beach episodes, I usually do like for some reason. Even though they add almost nothing of like value, I just kind of have a bias towards them. I can't really explain it. I'm gonna throw them in S tier. I always enjoy when they pop up in a manga or anime. I don't know why. The Emoto, or the little sister. This kind of goes hand in hand with the big brother complex. I'm just gonna throw this in C tier. They don't bother me. They exist. I don't lose sleep if they're not in a show, but I don't throw a fit if they're there either. Infinite power scaling. Something like Dragon Ball comes to mind, where the power is kind of like just, there's no limits to it. Of course, they can just keep breaking their limits over and over. And this doesn't bother me so long as the power is cool. I'm gonna throw it in B tier. Instant expert. This is when, I guess, a main protagonist or any character just picks up any skill instantly, and sometimes it could bother me when it's really convenient for if they're in a life or death situation and they automatically pick up a weapon and somehow become a god with it, or they immediately come into a job and learn every skill with it. So it could be really convenient sometimes, but it doesn't bother me. I'll throw that in C tier as well. Isekai. Even though it's more of a genre nowadays, it is still a trope of somebody reincarnating in another world. I do like Isekai, however, it is very overblown in the genre. Overblown in the anime world, and so for me, I'm gonna give it a B. I like a lot of isekais. Re:Zero is one of my favorite series. However, I don't watch every isekai, and sometimes it being an isekai could be the detriment of the series. Iashikai, which is healing anime. Yu Camp, Nan Biori, K-On! All come to mind. I love Iashikai. It is one of my favorite out there, and I'm just gonna throw it at top of double S. This shouldn't surprise anybody who looks at any of my layouts on any social media. They know that I love isekai shows, and this isn't a shocker to everybody. Japanese delinquent. The Japanese delinquents are always an interesting case. A lot of the times they're reserved for like the middle school students or like the biker gangs, and they could be cool sometimes, but for the most part, I don't really care for them. But they could be, when that aesthetic is applied to somebody that isn't necessarily delinquent, I do like Metal Bat from One Punch Man, and the weightlifting club, the guy with the pompadour from Mob Psycho. I enjoy that. I'm gonna throw it in C tier. The lens flare sensor, the enemy of everybody. I'm throwing it into D tier. It ruins any good scene, particularly in Hot Springs episodes, and I hate you. We have up next the kudere. And kudere, again, I need to look up my deades. I have to look up what that means real quick, and oh, okay, yes. Kudere, that's the cold, blunt, and usually they're just straight up characters. Again, this could also apply to somebody like Shimarine. Angel from Angel Beach, she's the poster example. I like kuderes. They can be fun sometimes. I'll throw that into B tier. Up next, we have the little sister complex. This is also basically just the same as the big brother complex, except it's the obsessive older brother, like over obsessing with his little sister, like being either overprotective or, you know, in love with her in certain instances. Or if it's Persona 4, you have the sister complex Kingpin of Steel, aka one of the best sister complexes out there. But for the most part, it's basically the same as Big Brother complex. I'll throw that into C tier. Moe, and Moe is just something that's cute. I like Moe aspects in any series. I don't gotta divulge into this too hard. I'll throw Moe into A tier. Non-existent parents. This is something that typically exists within shonen, and I myself haven't seen a lot of the popular shonen where the parents don't exist, but what comes to mind usually when I think of non-existent parent is something like Food Wars, except the fact that the dad is there, he just shows up randomly. And while I haven't seen this show, Hunter x Hunter and stuff, it's a trope that doesn't bother me, but I do prefer when the parents have some form of importance in the series. I'm just going to throw that down into D tier. Up next, we have nosebleed, and nosebleeds are fine. It's a way to show a character is excited by something or turned on by something, and you can't really visually express that in any other way aside from nosebleeds, and I think it's fine. Again, I don't mind when it's not in a show, but when it is in one, I don't really care. I just look at it and go, hey, that's a nosebleed. I'm gonna put that in C tier. The otaku surrogate. So this one could be applied to a lot of main characters. An otaku surrogate is basically somebody who's a weeb, somebody who's super into anime and manga culture, just like the viewer that's watching. And they either end up becoming like, you know, some super giga chad that gets all the girls in a harem anime, they get some super cool powers. They're basically a power fantasy for whoever's watching. And it's not a bad thing. It's a way to relate to to your audience, basically. I'm gonna throw it into D tier. It doesn't bother me, but I could go without it. Up next, we have the perverted MC. Perverted MCs can come and go when they're good. Somebody like Araragi is one of the best protagonists ever, and he's super perverted. And then on the opposite end of the spectrum, you just have perverted MCs who are perverted for the sake of being perverted. So the middle ground, or less than middle ground, I'll put that also in D tier. There's some good exceptions here and there, but for the most part, I could go without it. Plot armor. Plot armor is another thing that I'll probably put in D tier. Plot armor could come and ruin a very tense situation, or it could just make absolutely no sense given the context of what's going on. They might be facing an unstoppable enemy, and out of nowhere that enemy gets transported somewhere else because the main character can't die in that moment yet. So I'll throw it into D tier. Poor communication skills. I actually like this tier. Hitori Bochi and Komi from Komi-san are both characters that suffer from poor communication skills, and it's very fun to watch. I think it's just cute, and I like watching them work through it. So I'm gonna throw that into A tier. School festival. That exists in every single high school anime out there, and you can't avoid it no matter what. If it's the show is going into fall or summer, there's bound to be a summer or fall festival going on. So for the most part, they're always usually fun, but they always end up hitting the same notes of the maid cafe, having a bonfire at the end, a race. They're almost always the same. I'll throw it into B tier. Jumping all the way over to the student council president. This one is an interesting one. The student council in every anime and manga are things that are usually, they hold this great deal of power for no real reason. They basically are their own government that function outside of the school's own administration. The principal can't do anything, the vice principal, the teachers all have less of a say than the student council. And the student council president in particular are usually cold-hearted people, or they're very stern. And they can sometimes be fun, they can sometimes not be fun. I'll throw that into B tier. Tokyo is the center of the universe. Again, I have no big opinion on this one. It's made in Japan. They're of course going to center all of their stories into Tokyo in the same way that America centers all the stories on Los Angeles or New York. It's all about where it's made and their own experience. I don't understand why Tokyo or people in Tokyo would make a series about something in China 24/7. That's not going to happen as often. They write from their own experience, and Tokyo is the center of their universe, so of course they're going to center something there. So for me, I'll just throw that into C tier. Again, I don't mind it. Next up is the tournament arc. Tournament arcs can be really fun. They can also be really bad, but most of the time they're really fun. I like when they exist in shows like My Hero, Jujutsu Kaisen technically had one. They're fun. Dragon Ball Super especially, so I'll throw it into B tier. The tsundere. Tsunderes are one of my, this might be a controversial take, but they're one of my favorite tropes out there. I like Taiga is just a super sweet character. Usually they're jerks, but they're jerks for a reason. They have a reason for why they're acting the way they do. They usually can't divulge on their feelings, and it's always cute seeing them come into their own. So I'm going to throw tsunderes into A tier. And yanderes. What comes to mind when I think of yanderes is, of course, Future Diary and Yuki Yuno, and just, excuse me, Yuno Gasai, and just, they exist, I guess. I just don't really have too strong of an opinion on them. They usually just want to kill their lover. I'll throw it into D tier. Again, I could go without it. It's one of the least utilized tropes of the deres, obviously, and for good reason. And that just about does it. Let me know what you guys think, because I'm trying out some new things. I know I mention that almost every other video, but I really do mean that this time. I want to try out different type of content, of course still within the anime and manga realm, but just aside of rants and analysis, I'd like to do tier list and maybe even IRL type of content. And this was one of the first steps. I promise I'll make the editing better next time. And I'm just thinking of this as a test run, but if you guys really did enjoy this, liking and subscribing I would really appreciate. But yeah, this video was really scuffed.